called New Hope Uganda Ministries. One of the countless valuable experiences I gained while I was there was the opportunity to discover and explore my love for agriculture. As I think back on my days in Uganda, my mind instantly goes to the times on the Saturday mornings when we would ride our bikes 3 kilometers up to our garden and dig for a couple hours. We would spend our time there weeding, harvesting, or planting beans and maize, or we would be heaping and planting sweet potatoes or clearing bush, or we would be harvesting cassava, which is a fibrous root, something like yucca or tapioca. Here's a picture on the top left of my dad and Toby unloading some bananas from our garden and some fresh maize. The bottom left is Kevin heaping some sweet potatoes. And the top right is me in 2009 when I was harvesting some maize. The other picture is my brothers and I shucking the maize, which we do, the dry maize, by putting it into a sack and beating it until the kernels are loose off the cob and we can just twist it off easily. Up there is Kevin and I in our little garden, just playing around in the dirt. One year we grew something like peanuts. We called them G-nuts, but they're basically just peanuts. And we were drying them and getting them out of the shells. The animals, our pets, loved it when we brought home peanuts. The cats would love to sit with us while we did our work. And the dog was always happy to get the excess peanuts we didn't want. After we had finished our work in the garden, we'd sit in the shade, resting our sore backs and hands for the long ride home. One of my brothers might ride up the extra kilometer to the small town center nearby and buy us snacks to go with our morning tea that we'd have when we get home. Thanks, Mom. Or if it was mango season, we would trek deeper into the bush and go through other people's gardens and find the mango tree, where some of my brothers would climb up and pass mangoes back down to me, who I'd then make a stockpile. Once we had enough, we'd go back, sit in the shade, and eat the sweet, juicy fruit with our dirt-covered hands. There's a picture of Kevin and I coming back from one such exploration. Another, as soon as it comes back up, one of the other pictures is us when we were small. We started early, climbing mango trees. That's the top right. And the middle one is my brothers and I working together to get something out of a tree. We always love to work together like that. Memories like these are what make me love agriculture so much. Walking through God's creation, seeing what He's grown, tasting His fruit is a wonderful, awe-inspiring feeling. We as humankind were created in part to be workers of His land, caring and tending for what He's given us. We learn in Genesis that when He placed us in the garden, He said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food." So what happened? What's changed since then? Well, the fall happened, and a lot has changed. One thing that has not changed, however, is our job as stewards to care and tend for what God has given us. Because of the fall, we must double our efforts to take care of what He's given us and not make the same mistake Adam and Eve did of not properly stewarding His gifts. We can steward God's creation by farming biblically, being sustainable through our consumption, and learning how to be good stewards through agriculture. But what is biblical farming? And what is stewardship? We first must answer the question, what is not biblical farming? Let's say you want to start your own farm. You pour money into your project. You buy machinery that's not really necessary. You buy soil, compost, seeds, anything you might need to start a farm. You hire an expert to see if your land is fertile enough. It comes time to plant. You plant your seeds. They grow. You harvest them. You got a good return. You do it again. You plant and you harvest. Years go by. As time goes on, you realize your land is no longer producing what it used to. The produce is smaller, it's less desirable, and all around is just falling short of what you originally had planned. So once again, you hire an expert. He comes back and tells you your land is no longer as fertile as it used to be. You've been taking and taking and taking from the land, but you haven't been giving anything back. Because you did not respect what God gave you, it failed you. This is not a biblical way to farm at all. It is selfish and wasteful. Farming has a lot to do with what you believe. The way a person views right and wrong, the beginning of the earth, like life in its origin, and what their goals are, has a lot to do with how they view agriculture. In 1 Corinthians 10:31, it says, "Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." In order to glorify God through our farms, we must have a biblical heart and mindset. A farm that glorifies God gives a testimony of what God has given us to do, such as stewarding His creation. When others look at our farm, they should see a reflection of God's glory. In Matthew 5:16 it says, "Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father which is in heaven." When we do not properly steward what God has given us, we are not letting that light shine through. We are setting a bad example for those who are looking on from the outside, and we are not living to our fullest potential. Stewardship, simply put, is taking care of and honoring what you've been given. For example, you have a friend, a rather rich friend, who decides to move to South Africa for a year. While he's gone, he decides you should be the one to take care of his Ferrari. Ooh. While he's gone, I'm sure you're not going to drive that Ferrari around recklessly or get it all scratched up or leave it on the side of the road when it runs out of fuel. You're going to wax it every day. You're going to take perfect care of it, making sure it's in perfect condition for when your friend comes back. So when I say we need to steward the land, that's precisely what I mean. We need to honor it and take care of it because it's not actually ours. When we were placed on the earth, we were given the instruction to care for God's land. In Deuteronomy 10:14 it says, "Behold, to the Lord your God belong heaven and the heaven of heavens, the earth and all that is in it." Because the land is not ours, it demands the highest level of respect that we can give it. The book I read for Capstone this year, called Born Again Dirt by Noah Sanders, has a lot to say on this matter. Sanders says, if we want to have the proper biblical view of farming, the first thing we need to recognize is that God is the creator and ruler of all creation. If we want to honor the Lord through the way we farm, we have to understand that the dirt we work on isn't ours. As stewards, we don't have the right to do whatever we want with our farms. We have a responsibility to do what the owner of our farm wants in the way he wants it done. This year I learned some of those responsibilities of a biblical steward and how to be a biblical farmer. Being a biblical farmer begins with having the right heart. In Philippians 2:14 it says, "Do everything without complaining or arguing." And again in 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18 it says, "Be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ." We as Christian farmers must be joyful, thankful, prayerful people. As I look back on my garden days in Uganda, I have to laugh because sometimes I was not very happy to get up early on a Saturday morning and ride all the way 3 kilometers, dig for 2 hours, and ride all the way home again. And I definitely showed it. Just ask my dad or brothers. But even though the pain and tiredness can make it hard to be joyful and thankful, we as Christian farmers need to let that light shine through and provide a testimony for those around us. We also must be wholehearted in our work. In Colossians 3:23 it says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men." Hard work is not something everyone enjoys or values, but I've always enjoyed working my hands and for the most part welcomed the challenge of hard work. As a biblical farmer, I must give 100% of my effort into my work because I'm not working for men, I'm working for God. These principles not only apply to farming, but to all aspects of our life. Thinking about all these principles throughout the year has really challenged me because I'm not always very thankful, and sometimes I'm just really ungrateful for what I have. But going forward, I am determined to have a joyful, grateful, hardworking attitude and apply the principles of a biblical farmer to all the aspects of my life. The modern-day industrial agriculture industry is one of the areas where I've seen humanity falling short in our job of stewarding God's creation. The best way to steward God's land is to be sustainable and not waste what He's given us. Yet the industrial farming industry is one of the most wasteful, both financially and environmentally, areas of agriculture I've ever seen. I had the opportunity this year to interview a man named Chris Sperling who works with an organization called Farming God's Way. Farming God's Way uses agriculture to help impoverished people grow their way out of poverty. When I asked Chris what he thought about the industrial agriculture industry, he said, "It's kind of like man's way. Oh, we can do it with our money and our resources, and instead of considering how God might take care of the soil, or listen to people who are saying, no, we're not taking good care of the soil, they just keep pressing on with their methods, which need huge amounts of money to do what it takes." So Chris's view of the industrial agriculture is they pull from the soil until there's nothing left. Then they spend exorbitant amounts of money putting nutrients back into the soil, which ultimately take even more out. He also is not a fan of the industrial agriculture industry because it is not easily accessible for little guys like you and me to get involved and get profit from our produce. He said, "Not only are we on this treadmill of paying lots of money to get back to make the soil give us something, we're also into a system where only a few people farm and control it. And it's become something which has excluded small farming." Chris makes this into a bigger picture claim and says, "Something good should enable me to say, Acacia, here's how you do it, and here's how you can start today. It's not out of your reach, and it's not impossible. When we talk about Christian anything, we should never be telling people about something which is out of their reach. The gospel is God coming to us and making the gospel doable, not because we're great, but because He came to us and He gives us Himself, the Holy Spirit, and it's reachable, not in human terms, but in the fact that God comes to us. The same should be in every type of development that we should do." He expands on this, and I'd agree with him, that the industrial agriculture doesn't empower the farmer, it takes the power out of the farmer's hands and into a few companies' hands and the government's hands. So if industrial agriculture was good and it was Christian, shouldn't it be accessible and readily available for everyone like you and me to get involved? Well, it's not. It's also extremely wasteful, both financially and environmentally. Wastefulness is not a characteristic of a biblical farmer at all. Our job is to sustain and build up the earth, hopefully leaving it a better place than when we found it. My talk with Chris was very good and insightful, but it was also quite confusing, because if the industrial agriculture industry is so wasteful and unbiblical, do I really want to be a part of it as a career? If it's so exclusive, will I even be able to get into it as a career? These are questions which have been floating around my head this year as I think about my future and what I love. At the beginning of Capstone, the main thing I was looking forward to was working with my hands and getting experience in agriculture through doing agriculture. I didn't get as much hands-on work this year as I hoped, but I did enjoy what I did get to do. I started the year out with this grand idea of building a school greenhouse and starting a legacy and tradition of agriculture here at Front Range. This soon proved quite unrealistic, however, and I scaled my idea back down to keeping my own personal garden. So through using Mr. Ross's design and my dad's help building it, I built a garden in my closet using grow lights. So throughout the year, I have grown beets, radishes, tomatoes, and herbs in my closet. So this top picture is what my garden looked on March 1st. So as you can see, this picture I took a couple days ago, it's expanded quite a bit, and my plants have grown quite a bit. This radish actually is one from my garden. It didn't grow quite as well as I expected, but I mean, radishes weren't created to grow in a closet. So, yeah, it's a little disappointing, but it's a radish and I grew it. So, this is my tomato plant as well. It's a Britton tomato plant that is made to stay in a pot this small. I don't know if everybody can see it, but it'll get about this big, I think, and put on small orange cherry tomatoes that should be pretty sweet. Keeping this garden doesn't really compare or measure up to what I love and miss from Uganda, but it is a smaller, different version of what I love, which is seeing God's creation glorify Him through doing what it was meant to do. Keeping this garden certainly has been a learning experience, and any experience that teaches us a lesson is a good one. It introduced me to a new style of growing and showed me how diverse agriculture can be, yet also how simple it can be. The main lesson I'm taking away from this closet garden experience is how amazing and intricate, yet incredibly simple God's creation can be. All a little seed needs to grow into a big plant that can produce food for us is a little bit of water, food, light, and warmth. God's creation truly is amazing. This year has been a real teaching year for me and has helped me mature and grow into the person I am today. I've really loved exploring biblical agriculture and diving into what it means to be a biblical steward. It has made me more aware of how I treat my possessions and the possessions of others. And most of all, it has taught me that Christianity, the Bible, and God Himself can and should be applied to all aspects of our life, even if it's something simple like farming.